Hello and welcome to A Deeper Dive with me, Dara Cam. It has been a crunch at the Lafayette Park Rehab Center, so today we are reissuing an episode from January when our special guest was suspended Hillsborough County State Attorney Andrew Warren. Governor Ron DeSantis suspended Andrew last year, and a federal judge upheld the suspension. But the 11th U.S. District Court of Appeals heard arguments last week in Andrew's appeal of the decision. So sit back, relax, and have a listen to Andrew Warren talk about democracy. Today, we have a special guest. He's a repeat guest. 13th Judicial Circuit State Attorney Andrew Warren, who was suspended from office in August by Governor Ron DeSantis. A federal judge recently found that the governor violated the state and federal constitutions by suspending Andrew Warren. But the judge also found that the judge lacked the authority to do anything about it. Stick with us. We'll take a deep dive into Judge Robert Hinkle's ruling with Andrew Warren.
Powerful people without a moral compass are extremely dangerous. Politicians who are willing to break the law to get votes or applause are extremely dangerous.
You're listening to A Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by City and State, Florida.
Hello and welcome to A Deeper Dive with Dara Cam. That is me. Today we have a special guest with us, Andrew Warren, I'm hesitating, the state attorney from the 13th Judicial Circuit in Hillsborough County. I believe that status is still correct. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about with Andrew Warren. He was a guest of ours in one of our first episodes. Thanks for joining us today, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm struggling, but that's okay. We don't need to talk about me. Today it's all about you. Let's just jump right into it. Governor DeSantis suspended you from office in August. You were elected twice, Democrat, elected in 2016. You ousted an incumbent, kind of a big deal.
That's right.
Re-elected in 2020. Hillsborough County, that's the 13th Judicial Circuit. Governor Ron DeSantis suspended you from office in August, accusing you of incompetence and willful defiance of your duties. You sued to get your job back in federal court, and you were vindicated recently when U.S. District Judge Robert Hinkle found that DeSantis violated the federal and state constitutions by suspending you, but the judge said he lacked the jurisdiction to do anything about it. Well, I'd like you to talk about the complexities of that decision and what your next steps are going to be. At first, is that somewhat of a hollow victory for you, or do you feel vindicated?
Well, we feel vindicated. I mean, the court's findings are crystal clear. I did my job extremely well, and I did nothing wrong. That the governor's allegations against me are totally false, and that, as we've said from the beginning, the suspension broke the law. It violated, as you said, both the United States and Florida constitutions.
Are you, what's next? I know you probably don't want to give too much away. You haven't. You had a little press conference. You gave a statement. I don't mean little to minimize it. It was very important. Do you plan on appealing Judge Hinkle's ruling, or do you think that the Senate, which would be the next step, would be the Senate will eventually has the authority? Let me back up. The governor has the power in the state constitution to suspend an elected official. It's the Florida Senate that has the authority to actually strip them from office.
That's right. And that's why even when you introduced me, you were correct to say I am still the state attorney in Hillsborough County. I've not been removed from office. That's what the law is. That's what the judge made clear. I've just been suspended. And until the Senate votes to remove me or to reinstate me, I'll stay in this sort of limbo status until a court says otherwise or until the governor reinstates me himself.
Come on, let's get real now. I feel like I can say that to you. You don't think the governor's going to reinstate you, do you?
Well, it's hard to predict what the governor will and won't do. The governor, when he announced the suspension, he said that our government is a government of laws, not a government of men. And I totally agree with that sentiment. But the judge has now pointed out that the governor's suspension of me was illegal. It broke the law. The governor is supposed to uphold not just state law, but federal law as well. So the question is, what kind of man is he? I mean, is he a man of his word who actually believes in the rule of law? Or was he totally full of it when he says that? And he's just all talk and no action, afraid to do what's right. I mean, so again, I can't predict what the governor will do. But when your job is to uphold the law, and a judge, an independent referee in the courts has said, hey, what you did broke the law and broke multiple laws, most people would go ahead and fix that, right? We teach our kids when you do something wrong to own up to it and fix it. Federal judge has determined that the governor did something wrong. Let's see if he owns up to it and fixes it.
Well, in the event that he doesn't, will we see more litigation?
We could. I mean, we have a few avenues right now that we're exploring, but from the beginning, this was about more than just my position. And it goes back to the first question you asked, how am I feeling about this? On one hand, we're really relieved that we got the judgment that we expected, that this was illegal from the beginning, that it was a political hit job, that it was in violation of the law. We didn't get the relief that we deserve, at least not yet. But keep in mind that the goal of this was really to make sure that there's accountability, to make sure that we have free speech, to make sure that we have fair elections, to make sure that we have the rule of law. And for a judge to come out and say, yes, Andrew, you are right, the governor was wrong on this. We've accomplished those goals. Now we just have to get the ball across the goal line and actually get me reinstated.
Judge Hinkle is I've been covering him for many, many years and reading his opinions for many, many years, I should say, not covering him. He was very critical of the way that the non-investigation into your alleged wrongdoing was conducted. He actually did, I believe, use the word false about the allegations against you. This is a one snippet from Judge Hinkle's ruling that I used in my story that got a lot of traction. This is Judge Hinkle. The record includes not a hint of misconduct by Mr. Warren. So far as this record reflects, he was diligently and competently performing the job he was elected to perform, very much in the way he told voters he would perform it. He also found that you didn't have the so-called non-prosecution policies that were part of the basis for your suspension. Again, quoting from Judge Hinkle's ruling, any minimally competent inquiry would have confirmed this. The assertion that Mr. Warren neglected his duty or was incompetent is incorrect. This factual issue is not close. Wow, I mean, that had to have felt good reading those words, even though you are still in this, purgatory or limbo. Or the judge, you're a highly educated, Columbia Law School, right?
Right.
Help us understand a little bit the legal analysis, the judge's legal analysis. For some people, they might be confused how, okay, well, if he violated the federal constitution, why doesn't the judge have the authority to say that the governor was wrong and reinstate you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll, just to go back to a moment, to you quoting from the order, the judge said that there wasn't even a hint of misconduct. As you said, it wasn't even a close call. These are not my words. These are the judge's findings, that I was suspended for political motivation because of my association with the Democratic Party, because of the things that I stand for, because that I believe in reforming and improving our criminal justice system. And as the judge said, that doesn't fit with DeSantis's political agenda. I mean, these were the judge's conclusions. So, at the end of the day, the judge basically pointed out that the only thing that the governor got right in the executive order about me was basically my name and my position. Everything else he was completely false.
Well, before we go on to the legal analysis, let's talk a little more about what Judge Hinkle found, because I believe what he said was that basically the governor wanted to find a reform prosecutor who wasn't following the law, and then Larry Keefe, who is the state's quote unquote public safety czar, did a ask around to selected law enforcement officials, and I think he said, all roads led to you, but he didn't do a thorough investigation. In fact, he, by his own account, I was there when he testified, he said he didn't do an investigation. He did a look into. So it was as if the governor wanted to find someone that he could target, and you turned out to be that someone. Am I misinterpreting what the judge, and this is the judge, not Dara, saying this?
Correct. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. That was the judge's findings, and it was based on a complete record in this case. The judge talked about that there was a lot of time for discovery. There were a lot of documents produced and depositions taken. And throughout all of that, this extensive discovery, the governor's office couldn't find a single case where I hadn't followed the law, a single example of any misconduct. And that's part of the reason why the judge concluded that this was just a political hit job from the beginning. They had in mind that they wanted to take out, as the judge put it, a reform prosecutor. And there was obviously political benefit in doing so. And that's what they did. I mean, they had a predetermined conclusion. We're going to suspend someone from office. And they thought, who should that be? And Larry Keefe basically said from the beginning, it was going to be Andrew Warren. And that's what they did. And as the judge said, this was in the end, all a pretext, which basically means all just window dressing. They tried to come up with reasons to suspend me. They made up false allegations against me. They lied to the Florida public and said that they conducted an exhaustive investigation of state attorneys. They lied about the fact that they had looked at different state attorneys and looked at what I was doing. And the judge saw right through it. He said, you guys didn't do any of those things. You determined that you were going to suspend someone. You determined right away it was going to be Andrew Warren, and you just did it. And everything else was basically, again, window dressing, or in the legal term, pretext for reaching the conclusion that they were always going to reach. And that's why the judge said it was illegal. You can't do that. That violates the rule of law. That's not how our government works. That's not how free elections work. That's not how the Constitution works.
Right. And yet the judge found that although your First Amendment, the governor violated your First Amendment rights, many of the allegations, or some of the allegations against you, were founded in the statements that you signed on to with other prosecutors. I'm sorry, the name of the organization escapes me now, but help me out here.
Sure. Fair and Just Prosecution.
Fair and Just Prosecution.
That was the organization that basically put out a letter that had some general points, some specific points, and I, along with prosecutors and law enforcement officials from across the country, had signed on to these statements, basically speaking out on issues of public importance, on abortion, on LGBTQ rights, on the death penalty, on various issues that involve the criminal justice system that not only do we have a right to speak out on, but we should want our elected officials to speak out on. I mean, isn't that what transparency is all about? Do you want elected officials to hide their views on things, especially as a prosecutor? I mean, this is, as the judge said, not only was it illegal to be suspended for doing these things, but this is what a prosecutor should be doing. I did exactly what I told people I was going to do when they elected me twice in Hillsborough County. I stood up for things that I believed in, and I was transparent about it.
And so that was speech. Those statements the judge found were speech, and the governor violated your First Amendment rights by suspending you based on your speech. But he said the governor also based the suspension on factors involving your conduct, not speech. And as a result, he said that he couldn't overturn the suspension. Here's where Columbia Law School could help us out.
Well, so the jurisdictional issue of federal courts versus state courts is really nuanced. And I'm sure there are lots of people struggling to understand how a judge can rule that the suspension was illegal, that it was politically motivated, that I did nothing wrong, but not grant relief. And, there was a constitutional law professor who said it's ironic because the governor broke both federal and state law, the court was hamstrung in its remedy. So, I mean, again, at the end of the day, this is about making sure that people understand that the suspension was illegal, that free speech is important, that the integrity of our elections is important, and that the governor can't just muzzle free speech and overturn an election because he wants to. And that's exactly what this judge said. It was a very, very stern reprimand to the governor for violating multiple laws.
It was a stern reprimand in Judge Hinkle's way. We have other federal judges who tend to get much more bellicose, and Judge Hinkle is not bellicose, but it was very very harsh reprimand. We'll be right back with Andrew Warren.
Here at Deeper Dive, we want to hear from you, the listeners. We invite you to send your questions, comments, and feedback to our mailbag. You can reach us at deeperdive@cityandstatefl.com. That's deeperdive@cityandstatefl.com. Get your 2 cents in by sending us an email.
Welcome back to A Deeper Dive with Dara. And yet you say that the governor can't do these things, and yet the status quo is that the governor does seem to have what appear to be unfettered powers because you remain suspended. A majority, if you were to take this challenge to the state Supreme Court and challenge your suspension as being violative of the state constitution, as a federal judge already has found that it did, I'll tell you, I'm not going to lie. I don't know that you would get relief from the state Supreme Court, which has a majority of justices appointed by Governor DeSantis now. Do you think you'd get a fair shake there?
Well, I have a lot of faith in our court system, but I really think the question, begs a broader question. Let's think back to when Donald Trump had bragged that, he could kill somebody on Fifth Avenue or Madison Avenue and people would be okay with it. Right. Look, the law is only as meaningful as people's willingness to care about it and about courts' willingness to enforce it. So I have faith in the fact that courts are going to enforce the law, and I still have faith that people care about it. But the problem is when you have elected officials, whether it's, President Trump or Governor DeSantis, and those aren't the only ones, of course, who break the law and who do it intentionally and don't care, and then stand up and brag about it. Yes, we took away these people's constitutional rights. Yes, I killed this person on Fifth Avenue, and you guys won't do anything because a jury will never convict me. That, tears away at the very fabric of our country, at the most fundamental core values that we are supposed to believe in: the rule of law, democracy, that no man, no person is above the law. So when you say, does it have an impact because, the governor, I'm still out of office and the governor is still the governor? Yes, but it has an impact when people care about it. So long as people are not going to just blindly put up with their elected leaders breaking the law out of some blind partisan loyalty, and instead show true patriotism, where they really care about the fundamental ideals of our country rather than the political partisanship of the day, that's how it matters.
So, are you a half glass full or a half glass empty guy? Because I'm a half glass empty gal.
Um, when it comes to my faith in people to do the right thing and in the public to understand what's right and what's wrong, I'm certainly a glass half full guy.
Because I'm thinking, when you were just speaking right then, I'm thinking about January 6th. I'm thinking about the kind of nation that we live in today, and I hear people say, this is not who we are. No, who we are is a nation of people who I believe a majority of people in one party believe that an election was not fairly conducted and that a sitting president is not a fairly elected sitting president. And, oh, by the way, his followers tried to overturn the government, tried to stop the confirmation of a duly elected president. So I guess, I don't want to be Debbie Downer sitting here in my wheelchair, but I mean, it sounds kind of lofty, and I like what you're saying. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying. Both of my parents are buried in Arlington National Cemetery and died. My father died giving, in service to this country. So I am a patriot, and I believe in the democratic values and the system that we have created. But I'm not sure that we have a society that is anything better than blindly obedient to its tribal leaders.
I certainly think at times we're like that, but thank you for your father's service, and he served to protect and defend the values of our country. And I think even though there are moments in our history, and some moments are louder than others, when it's hard to be optimistic about the perseverance of those values in terms of the hearts and minds of the American public, but we do persevere. I mean, at the end of the day, to paraphrase Lincoln, the better angels of our nature do prevail. And so you look at January 6th, yes, terrible thing that happens, people trying to overthrow the government, people attacking law enforcement. And then you have politicians and a segment of the population who is willing to condone it or say it didn't happen or live in this alternate factual universe. Those people are always going to be there. People who are blind to reality because, they're just so focused on their partisan allegiance. But people who attack the Capitol have been convicted by juries of their peers. The Justice Department has gone after those people. Most people, the vast majority of Americans, have stood up against what happened on January 6th. So yes, there are always going to be those pockets of people who are, give us pause because they make us worry about the pessimistic side of things. But I think overall we should be optimistic about what happens. And I'm saying that as someone who just had a judge say, you were illegally suspended, but didn't put me back in office. But, I say that because the support has been overwhelming. The number of people who have come out, especially people who said, look, I like the governor, but this was wrong. He should not have done this. You should be back in office. To me, that's what gives me such hope and faith in our people.
You say you've had a widespread support. I saw Jennifer Rubin wrote an op-ed today today as we are recording in the Washington Post, condemning your suspension and reiterating what Judge Hinkle said. And also, you said in your statement following Judge Hinkle's ruling that this should send shivers down the spine of anyone who cares about a democratic system. Do you want to elaborate on that, the chilling effect that this might have? And also, oh, by the way, then I was going to ask you if you wanted to give a plug for your legal defense fund too.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can start with that. I mean,
Yeah.
we continue to fight this battle. The governor is fighting this with taxpayer dollars. And a report from the Tampa Bay Times had said that, the governor spent something like $13 million defending various lawsuits, the legal bills on mine alone, on the governor's side. And this is taxpayer dollars paying for it, well over $1 million. I've had to pay for this myself. So we've been raising money at andrewwarrenfl.com. If you want to support our fight in the fight for democracy, andrewwarrenfl.com. You were asking me before about, my comment to Jennifer Rubin. It's really about the fact that it doesn't matter if you're left wing, right wing, Democrat, conservative, old, young. If you care about free speech, if you care about fair elections, if you care about the rule of law, then this should send shivers down your spine, because we have to put down that partisanship for just a moment and look at what happened. The sitting governor of the third most popular state in the country broke federal and state law in overthrowing an election, in suspending me from office. I mean, let me repeat that. The governor broke federal and state law. We need to let that sink in for a moment. And as a people and as a state, stand up to the fact that we can agree with him on policy. We can agree with what he stands for. We can like the governor in lots of different ways, but you can't call yourself a patriot. You can't say you care about the rule of law. You can't say you care about free speech and democracy if you were okay with the governor breaking the law to overturn a free and fair election.
Do you think Governor DeSantis will run for president?
I mean, certainly it appears that he's doing that. He's off in Iowa and all these different places, not tending to the needs of Floridians. But, I don't know if he's running for the governor of those other states, or it certainly makes sense that he's doing it because he's planning to run for president. Ultimately, it's for the voters to decide whether he would make a good presidential candidate. But I would note, powerful people without a moral compass are extremely dangerous. Politicians who are willing to break the law to get votes or applause are extremely dangerous. And you look at what Governor DeSantis has done in Florida, attacking people that he disagrees with, not just me, but teachers and businesses and Disney and elected officials and voters. And if he disagrees with you, he goes after you. That's not what freedom is about. And I think if he runs for higher office, the American people are going to see that very clearly.
What about you? I mean, your name is being bandied about now. You're becoming somewhat of a rock star in statewide and national Democratic circles. Do you have your eyes on a prize beyond Hillsborough County?
My goal from the beginning of this was always to be reinstated as state attorney. In terms of personal, I talked about how there were issues bigger than just me at play here. But I've spent the majority of my career, the past 2 decades, as a prosecutor. I love being a prosecutor. I love serving this community where my kids are growing up. I don't know what's going to happen with this case. We, still hope to be reinstated, and I look forward to serving out my term as state attorney. And if opportunities come down the road for me to be able to serve this community or the state of Florida in a different way, then I'm open to that. But right now, my focus is just on getting my job back.
Well, Andrew Warren, is there anything that you'd like to add? Do you think we've hit all the bases, or something I didn't ask that I should have asked?
No, I don't really know what the next step is. I'll tell you, one of the questions I've been asked a lot is whether I regret any of this, any of the decisions that I made that led to my suspension. And let's be clear, this wasn't about decisions that I made. As the judge pointed out, this was the governor just wanted to, take out a political rival. But do I regret standing up for what I believe in? Do I regret standing up for a woman's right to choose? Absolutely not. I told people how I would exercise my discretion. That's exactly what any prosecutor should do. It's what any elected official should do. And I would do it again. I stand by everything that I've done. And I'm proud of the fact that I was reelected by a wide margin in 2020 because I had earned the support of this community.
What are you doing all day long now when you're not working? Are you working on your legal case? How do you spend your time?
Well, I've been working on the legal case for, from the time I was suspended until trial. Since trial ended, it's been a little bit different. I've actually been able to take advantage of the time to be with my kids a lot more, to be able to take them and pick them up from school and do homework with them and get them through activities and really appreciate firsthand how my working wife manages being an attorney and a mom. I still don't know how she does it, but that's the silver lining in this is I've been able to find more time with my family. But I look forward to being back at work.
Okay, Andrew Warren, Mr. Mom. Thank you so much for joining us again. Andrew, I really look forward to having you back on again soon.
Dara, thank you so much. You have a great day.
A Deeper Dive with Dara is a podcast by City and State Florida, hosted by Dara Cam, produced by Ryan Daly, and music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC, and performed by Ryan Daly and Danny Reyes.